Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Ninth Hour, the official podcast of Ninth CX. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Card Academy, where you can find all the latest and greatest in Weiss Schwarz, card supplies, and more. We're joined today by the full NA cast of Melanie, Travis, and Johnny. Thank you guys for being here today.
No
We're going
problem.
to be moving on to our next kind of spoiler exploration from this upcoming set is the Order of Rabbit, or Gochiusa, as it's also shortened to be. Um, as we've said in times before, we have some quick ways that we've used to evaluate card of the day spoilers. And if you're just turning to this now, you might notice that the outline has been adjusted based on our most recent article stating said reasons for adjustments. The first thing that we want to do is read a card and think about it in terms of its standalone viability, its traits, its colors, its unique abilities, its timing, if there is an applicable pairing in universe. And yes, even though this is quite anime specific, this is really relevant, such as Asuna and Yuki, or Kyoko and Sayaka, and so on. And if the conditions are narrow or broad, that is, if you can play it at any time versus if you need to fulfill a certain set of conditions, like if the moon is hanging overhead and it's the third day of the third month, that kind of thing. Next, we want to think about where the card fits into the greater context of the series, which can include cards that have already been spoiled, or if this is one in a multiple box series, what other cards already exist from the card pool, followed by rarity, available card slots, and also we want to pay special attention to cards that might fit the word hyped or overpowered to really see if there is more to them or less, or if the hype truly meets the cards. So we're going to be going through some of these cards in kind of color order as they would appear in a set. And a number of cards have been spoiled now, and we're going to be starting off from yellow cards. And for that, we have Melanie to take us through each of these cards. Take it away, Melanie.
So our first double R, and the only double R we have in yellow, is Rabbit-Eared Parka Shara, 0/0, 1500 base power. Her traits are Fleur de la Pan and Honor Student. She has two abilities. Continuing, during your own turn, this card gets 1000 power. And her second ability is Auto. During the start of your opponent's attack phase, you may move this character to an empty border on your center stage.
So we have here something that gets a little bit more power in your turn and the ability to run. So, Johnny, what are your first impressions of this card?
I like this card a lot. It's a conditionalist runner, and usually those are 2,000 power, but she has the added bonus of getting 1,000 on her turn, so she becomes 2/5, which is bigger than usual. And the fact that she is a runner, her smaller on defense doesn't really matter. I guess the only downside to her is that some people consider the milling for mill runners is a good thing because you can get closer to climaxes, but I find that it's level 0 and you kind of want to get to level 1 first, so that sort of gets in the way sometimes.
All right. Pretty fair. Travis, anything to add?
Like Johnny said, the mill effect is definitely helpful if you're trying to get to climaxes. But as for defense, I'm not a really big fan of the 1500. That's just me. But in the case of protecting maybe soul damage, I see it. But otherwise, I'd rather keep it alive.
And Melanie, anything to add on top of that?
I think I'll just add the 1500 base power is still enough to take out some of the level reversers in most sets, especially those with special abilities. If you look at it that way, maybe. I actually think the card is really just decent. Haven't seen a conditionless runner in a little while, so it's a nice card to have splashed in any build, I think.
All right. So let's move on to the next card.
So the next card I have up here is a rare, Humble Girl Charo. She's 2/1 with a base power of 6,000, and her traits again are Fleur de la Pan and Honor Student. She's an assist in front continuous to all of your level 3 or greater characters in front, and they get 2,000 power. And her second ability is an auto ability. When the climax, the two childhood friends, is played onto your climax border, all of your characters get 1,000 power until end of turn. I am just going to mention this now because it's relevant to this card, but the climax in question is a gold bar in green that combos off the 3/2 double R we'll talk about a little bit later.
All right. So this being a assist for, well, level threes and level threes only. Travis, what are your thoughts on it just being restricted to level 3 or greater characters?
At level 2, I don't see the value of it, except for maybe its climax combo. Instead of being when you play a climax to give 1,000 power to a character, it gives 1,000 power to all characters, the combos with a specific one. But unless we have an early play that it could be used for, I don't see much value for it.
Johnny, thoughts?
Like Travis said, usually I like to play these kinds of assists in decks that have early plays to get the most value out of them. And the plus 1,000 to all your characters is nice. It's not like the traditional plus 2,000 when you play a climax to a single character. So say if you have like 3 Chias and you want to clock kick 3 characters, the 1,000 across the board helps.
Well, if only we could have that happen all the time, right? Right. Well, I think that about covers everything here. Melanie, do you have anything else, or shall we move on?
I think we're good to move on.
All right, let's get the next card.
So the next card is a 3/2 rare, Princess-like Temperament, Sharo. She's got a base power of 9,500 power, and her traits again are Fleur de la Pawn and Honor Student. She has 3 abilities. For a rare level 3, that's kind of interesting. Continuous, when all of your other characters have Shara or Chia in their name, this card gets an additional 1,000 power. Continuous, during this card's battle, your opponent cannot play any backups from their hand. And finally, her auto ability is when this card is placed from your hand to the stage, you may place the top card of your clock to the waiting room.
Right, so we have here an odd combination of 3 abilities, and I just kind of wanted to I guess jump the conversation on this one because I think we can notice right away this card cannot be played a level early. In these days, a lot of the characters that have a condition to get a little bit more power that heal also have the ability to come down at level 2 with some sort of condition being fulfilled. But poor Sharo, she does not have a way to enter the stage early. Rather, she just shuts out backups from battle, and that means that events can still be used. So, Melanie, do you think that this card could have done with a kind of trespass or early play condition?
I tend to agree with that. The fact that it doesn't have a change just by the way the card reads, we already know that down in that final ability. The extra 1,000 power is nice, but if you don't have a counter in hand, even having the back row assist behind it isn't going to really make a difference as far as the no backups from hand, except for maybe 1 or 2 small matchups where people have backups with other abilities. And the heal is nice, but again, we're kind of used to seeing those effects a little bit more often at level 2 nowadays, because it seems like at level 3 with the heavy finish push that sometimes, I mean, the healing just isn't as effective that late game in a deck where it's just going to heal once and it's not a loop.
Johnny, what is can you think of any like backups that this might stop people, or that this card might stop in terms of backups we need to look out for?
You probably won't see it a lot, but in SGS in red, there is a 2/1 backup. When you use the backup, pay 2, burn your opponent for 1. I've used that card to kill multiple opponents before. It's pretty funny. So I guess that, and if you for some reason attack with her first, your opponent could potentially anti-change the character in front of like Chia or something to stop you from getting your clock kick off. But off the top of my head, those are the only 2 that I would look out for.
I see. All right. Well, let's keep things moving then. Sorry, Travis. Melanie, why don't we go to, oh my, doping?
So this is a 2/0 event that is has no trigger, and it says choose one of your characters with Sharo in its name. It gets the coffee trait for the turn and 8,000 power until end of turn. So, and it should be noted that this is not a counter event. so it would have to be played on your main phase.
Oh boy. So since we skipped over you for the last card, Travis, what are your thoughts about this card?
I think I found the reason why the level 3 Sharo has a anti-backup. Although, considering this isn't a backup itself, I'm not a huge fan of it. Because it's one of those just like, oh hey, an extra 8k might be helpful with the backup. Oh wait, it's not a backup though.
Yeah, Johnny, what do you think?
Um, Honestly, I don't think I would use it in my decks. I guess they want you to use the Sharo level 3 to kill your opponent, like kill him dead, because there's really no need for like 8,000 power and no backup. Like nothing's gonna stop you for that. Um, just to like bring up, I think this card is kind of like the badge in AOT, but that was more flavorful, and you'd have to use it to attack the Titans. But for this one, I'm not really sure what you would use this to get over, because it'd be more useful if you could put on Chia for a clock kick, but it doesn't work like that.
You know, maybe you're supposed to just like have a can of, black coffee when you play this card, and just chug it in front of your opponent. Maybe the idea is that we're just supposed to get as a hyper, right? Maybe that's what's supposed to be. I don't know. I don't
Well,
think that a lot of people would be very okay with drinking a lot of coffee during playing a game, but
Especially if you like your coffee with, or if you like your milk and sugar with a little bit of coffee.
yeah, of course, of course. Melanie, anything on this one?
well, I'm actually wondering just, and something probably a little bit more relevant later on in this presentation here and podcast. Giving of the coffee trait might actually have more viability in some different mixed builds. Because if we look at her character traits, they're all the restaurant that she works for, Fleur de la Pan, and then the fact that she's an honor student. And there are some other cards in the set that do work off that coffee trait, but it still is pretty lackluster because of the lack of it being a counter. And again, kind of to point out what Johnny said, like the extra 8,000 power is kind of overkill.
Yeah. Well, let's move on from this thing. We might have spent a little bit too much time to volleyball.
So the 1-0 volleyball Sharo has the traits Fleur de la Pan and Honor Student. She has two separate auto abilities. The first is when this attacks, if you have the wing climax in the climax area, which is pictured below on the slide here, reveal the top card of your deck. If that card is a Sharo or a Chia character, add it to your hand. If not, it remains on top. Her second ability is a second separate auto trigger. When this attacks, if you have three or more other Sharo or Chia characters, this turn this gets plus 2,000 power on top of the 4,500 power base.
Aha, so we have here kind of the reveal of the big yellow level 1 card advantage CX combo. Melanie, what do you think about this one?
For a rare hand plus combo, it's not bad. Something probably a little bit more relevant when we go over the green cards, because obviously this doesn't just add Sharo cards to hand. It also adds Chia, who is green. It would have been kind of nice to see the trigger or the climax on this maybe be a Stock Soul or a Punish Burn. The other thing that kind of worries me about this card's add plus effect is the fact that there is an event that is relevant that people may choose to play in a kind of Sharo Chia deck that you'll see a little later on that could dilute your likelihood of plussing off this combo. It is, however, a free hand plus. You don't have to reverse something, and it's literally just an on attack trigger, which is pretty nice on just a rare card. Also, I like the fact that the plus 2,000 power is separate from the climax combo, because if you do get in a situation, which sometimes happens with level 1 combos, where like you only have the characters in hand and you never saw the climax, you could still potentially get a 106 500 attacker before assist on the stage, and so part of that card's ability isn't completely like dead.
That sounds about accurate for all of these things, that they are separate but still powerful. Ideally, we're flipping off three cards from the deck that we're just adding right to our hands. But um, I don't know, Travis. What do you think about the combo? Do you like the kind of variance that it involves, or do you tend to shy away from that?
Um, Actually, I really like this combo. Yeah, it's not a search combo, so it doesn't really compress. But in the case you do, reveal an event or something, or a climax, to be more frank, uh, you at least know what your trigger is. And plus, the hand plus isn't bad either, although it really isn't as great as a search, in my opinion.
So I would say that you're probably more on the optimistic end of things, where, just because it's free, if you get it, it's nice, and if not, well, oh well.
Yeah, you at least know what your trigger is.
All right, Johnny, do you share the sentiment, or are you on the more, I guess, skeptical end of this? Because I know that some players will say, "Oh, because it can miss, you probably shouldn't use it." Where are you on this one?
Um, Having played with other decks to have the same plusing ability, honestly, I kind of like it more because when you play decks that have to on reverse search or something, it's always a race to get to level one first, and sometimes you lose that race. Whereas with this ability, like sometimes with my other decks, I can wait till level two and just drop three of them and then still get the combo off fine. And I kind of prefer this more.
Hmm. All right, that's a fair point. Well, right, sounds good. Now, let's move on to our green spoilers. Now, as we said before in our evaluations, we kind of want to check the in-universe pairings. Now, for those of us that have watched Gotiusa, we will know that Sharo actually wants to, well, let's just say that she desires a certain ship that clearly Bushiroad has not sanctioned, because Sharo is being put with Chia, and Chia is all about green. And based on some of the cards that we're going to see here, we can see that uh, hmm, it looks like because they're neighbors, they're going to be put together in terms of cards and combos. So sorry, Sharo, but um, here are the cards. Now, first we have the Rabbit-Eared Parka Chia, which is a 3/2 with 9,000 power, 2 soul, a soul trigger. The traits are Amosa'an, which is where she works, and Sweets. Now, if you have three or more other characters on your stage with Sharo and or Chia in the name, she gets 2,000 power. When played from your hand, you draw up to two cards and then discard a card. Note that if you don't draw anything, you still will need to discard a card. And it has a CX combo with the two childhood friends, as we mentioned from the support in the last slide. If you reverse that character in battle with the CX in play, you can send that to clock. So here we have it, the big finisher, the one that has a nice combo that sends things to clock. Melanie, what do you think about this one?
This card, in a lot of ways, is similar to Black Dress Hamura and Madoka, and some other clock kickers. It's really nice because it is a relightable clock kick, not just an on play from hand. That doesn't cost anything if you have the climax out. Also, I kind of like that the first two abilities, again, aren't tied to the climax combo. So if for some reason your draw 2, ditch 1 doesn't get you into the gold bar climax, she can still get the extra 2,000 power, and she can still potentially plus your hand, maybe even by drawing into another 3/2 that can get you that much closer to the climax for the finishing combo. It's a chance at those things, but it's still really solid. Plus, the climax does combo off of the 2-1 assist that we saw on the previous slide, and it also, the 2-1 assist also gives plus 2,000 in front, which means that potentially, just to start off the bat here, by her own ability, she's going to hit 11k, 12k with the climax, and if you have the assist, well, you're going to get an extra 3,000 power off of that assist as well. And like Johnny and Travis pointed out on the previous slide, the extra 1,000 power when you play the climax goes to the entire stage. So if you're able to get a full field or even just two of these off, they're potentially all getting those extra power bonuses, which helps kind of get around some of the counters available.
And if I can just, I guess, phone in a friend, I will note that our current world champion, Clinton, does really enjoy claw kicking effects, among other things. Like he believes that that's the kind of best form of finishing damage that you can get because it's not really damage so much as it's just kind of a card and clock, or as Magic players would say, it's just life loss, right? You can't really do much about that in terms of prevention because we don't really have any cards. I can't think of any cards in the game right now that say the next card that would go to your clock doesn't. I think that's how you would probably address something like that, but
It,
that kind of effect would seem really obscure.
it gets
And would
around anti-damage counters, and it also gets around encore abilities.
oh
Um,
yeah, that's true.
because it's not there on this. If you get the effect off, it's not there on the stage to encore, and then either relight a finish combo, or deal you more damage the next turn.
And I may also chime in, it also is an extra damage with zombie characters as well. Because since the character is reversed, your opponent has to take the effect, but it's still on their clock.
Oh yeah, that is a good point. That is a good point. Johnny, do you like the way that this resembles a kangi, or you have anything to add with this one?
Um, I like level threes that have climaxes that draw to discard one, but it also combos with a bar, so that might be a little redundant. Playing decks with bars, I noticed that I don't have a problem getting them in my hand already. But the fact that the combo goes with two different climaxes is nice, so it gives you options. And yeah, climax kick combos that clock kick are usually my favorite because they're replayable. And yeah, I think it's a really good card.
All right. So with that, let's move on to the next card in the Timber Framed City, Chia. It's a 0/0 with 500 power, so probably not going to be attacking. Same traits as before, Amo Sa'an and Sweets. And it has a trigger that says whenever you use an activated ability or an act, you choose a Shara or Chia character that you control, and it gets 1,000 power until end of turn. And she has a Brainstorm, so you pay one and rest her, and you reveal the top four, put them into your waiting room. For each CX that you reveal, you basically clock swap. You choose a card in your clock, return it to your hand, and then put the top card of your deck into clock. Uh, Unless you have a really burning desire to get to another level, we do not recommend that you use this with zero cards in clock because uh, it means that you'll end up with at least one card in clock more than when you did before you used the ability. Because it does actually, if you can't choose a card in clock to return to your hand, the game will make you then clock yourself. I mean, you'll be able to do it every time thereafter, but still. So this is an interesting, I guess, combination of abilities of sorts because it's a brainstorm. It can give something 1,000 power, but it's a clock swap brainstorm. Instead of just talking about, I guess, the combination, Johnny, let's go to you first. How do you like clock swap in terms of brainstorm?
Um, I would say it's probably my second to least favorite, my least favorite being draw. But it's sometimes useful because it can color fix you sometimes, or if you're like color locked, it can also kind of get you out of that. So it has its uses, but the pool that you're pulling your cards from is very limited.
Yeah. Travis, what do you think about clock swap brainstorm? Do you like it, dislike it?
I actually like that sort of like ability, not specifically on a brainstormer. Like Johnny said, you only have a pool between 1 to 6 cards to choose from at any given time. But I'm familiar with the ability, so I actually kind of like this a lot more than some others might. But in the end, it'd be a lot better if it was like a climax combo to do so. Not so much on a brainstorm because brainstorms tend to fizzle out more than climax combos.
Melanie, your thoughts on clock swap brainstorm?
Um, they're not my favorite because, again, you don't get to search and pinpoint what you want. However, I don't particularly hate them either. They're still a plus to hand. The nice thing about this one is that the replace damage comes off of the top of your deck. It's not a hand swap, which would be like a hand filter brainstorm instead of a hand plus. Also, it should be noted that because of the wording on this brainstorm, you can get back anything. That includes a climax. That can also include, like, if you're in a situation where you have very few cards in hand, like let's say I only have like a couple of cards in hand, but I need to clock something, and I want that 3/2 that I just clocked back, or if I wanted that event or climax I just had to clock back, you can go ahead and use the brainstorm, and if it hits, you get that back to hand for another damage off the top of your deck. So it's still a hand plus. It's a much more limited hand plus, but I think if you play with it and use it to its strengths, it's not a terrible brainstorm for this build.
All right. So we're going to go through a couple of these rather quickly because unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, we have seen so many of these before. The Hanari Chia is a clock reverser. That is, when it's reversed and the character that reversed it is level 0 or lower, you may choose to put the top card of your opponent's clock into their waiting room and then put that character into their clock. Clock reversers are somewhat common these days. I think that the fact that the clock reversal ability is just by itself might raise some alarm bells for some folks, just because, well, demand is high for really high utility characters these days. That is, they would probably expect to sacrifice a little bit more of that power, maybe even going down to 1,000 or 500 power, in order to give this Chia some more utility. But alas, it's kind of vanilla. You kind of get this generic answer for a lot of characters that can get around encore abilities. Following that, we have a very kind of vanilla Chia that just gets 500 power for each other Shadow and or Chia that you control. So basically it's a 1/0 6500 with no particularly special abilities. It's great for filling up a field if you really want to get ahead with the beatdown, but the effect is just so common that we might not want to go into too much depth with it. I mean, it's good to know that the set has it, but at the same time, hooray, the set has it. So let's move on to the Anko, which also, by the way, has Chia in its name if you look at the first couple of characters. So when you play the Anko, you can choose a Chia you control to give it plus 1,000 power until end of turn. And it has an activated ability that's quite interesting. Much like Puyo Puyo has the red papyrus that kind of lets you climax level swap. This one does one better. Excuse me. You can pay 3 stock, send it to the waiting room to choose a Sharo from your waiting room with the level equal or lower than your current level, and then basically replace it where Anko was. So if you're level 3 and you want to get a level 3, 2, 1, or 0 Sharo, you can pay 3 stock, swap it out. And guys, what do we think about this, Melanie? Do you think that this is a decent card, that it might have its uses?
I think it might have its usage in some clutch situations. However, the cost of 3 stock is pretty heavy when you're looking at some of the other things that this deck is going to want to do. And we really haven't seen any kind of plus stock either in the climaxes yet or in the card abilities. I think it's a little too early to tell how useful this card will be. I think that the on play ability is nice because it's just a free 1,000 to something to power over something at any point in the game. But the second ability, it's more of like an emergency. I wasn't able to get any of my 3/2s in hand, and I am holding the climax and still want to either clock kick something or I need an emergency heal, which are really the only kind of uses for this card. And actually, I'm going to correct myself here because I think, yeah, it has to be a Sharo, not a Chia. So you would have to get like the 3/2 heal, I guess, would be your target for this. But I could only see using it in extreme emergency situations to get that onto the stage.
Johnny, do you like the effect? At least the second part.
I think it's a little too costly, but it can get you a healer, like Melanie says, when you really need one. But let's see here.
Well, that's the thing. It probably won't allow a lot of healers to trigger because they tend to trigger when they're played from hand to stage instead of.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's true.
Yeah.
But the first ability is nice though, because if you need like an extra 1,000 and it's like final turn, you can just drop it and bump up your clock kick. So it has its uses, but I would probably say I would, if I did use it, maybe 2 max, maybe just 1.
Mm. Travis, are you thinking similarly with this one?
I like it, but I don't like it in terms of its second ability. Because yes, it can potentially get a level 3 on the field. 3 stock typically is what it costs to change from a level 2 to a level 3, because you have to pay the character cost on top of the change cost. But since it's the same level, the only real use I can see for this card, since it won't trigger the heal, is maybe if you couldn't get the 2/1 Sharo in your hand, paying the 3, sending it to waiting room to get that 2/1 out of your waiting room, so that way you can use it with the gold bar combo.
Yeah, that is an idea. And so this now brings us to kind of the last and most interesting, I suppose, looking card that has been spoiled from the colors so far, which is the Fleur's Flyer. Now, it's a 3/2, but it's an event. So its effect is when you have 4 or more CXs in your waiting room. So basically, if you use this with fewer than 4, this will have no effect. All of your Princess-like Temperament Shadow and Rabbit Parka Chia get 3,500 power, and the following ability until end of turn. When this character attacks, or when this card attacks, put the 2 top cards of your deck into the waiting room, and if they are yellow and green, you may burn 1. So this is, I guess, a more preemptive approach. It's not quite the punish burn. It's more proactive. But the hoop is you've got to mill away a yellow and a green card. And if I may, I think I would just like to say that when I first saw this card, I thought, holy moly, how is it ever going to be really a sure thing that I will be able to mill exactly 1 yellow and 1 green card? It just feels so unlikely. I think I would rather use the qualities of my opponent's deck against them, in that they only have 8 climaxes total potentially in their deck, and that I'll just leave it to that instead of putting it all on me to potentially deal 1 damage. And we'll go in the reverse order. Travis, do you like this one?
I mean, we have a burning clock kick, possibly, but unless
Okay, sure. We have this wonderful setup that we could have, but
but in terms of it, unless there's a way spoiled in the future for you to top check like 6 cards or something, to dig down deep or whatever, no. The power's nice, but you're not going to get that extra ability off.
for this one, you would have to check 9 cards, right? Because you mill 2 and then you check 1 for a trigger, and then ideally none of them have to be a bar, because then that could skew the next cards down. So you would have to probably just scan 9 cards if you really wanted that stuff. And that's existed.
Excuse me. Also, granted though, you can stack this effect. So even if you don't get off the first time, if you stack this effect, you can just do it again. Or if you're completely out of climaxes, you can just mill through your deck a lot faster too.
That is a good point. Hey, Johnny, out of curiosity, have you ever run into a game where you have 12 stock just lying around to use?
Oh, all the time.
Really, I see. Now, this is totally a loaded question, guys. Just so you know, because I don't want this to come up as too snarky. Because I mean, right, two stock is basically what a full character you would expect to pay for, right, at level three. So, I mean, I kind of wanted to make it a little tongue in cheek by saying, well, yeah, I guess some of us are just blessed with having 12 stock around. I mean, Melanie, have you ever had 12 stock just lying around at level three?
In a deck that we haven't even seen a stock soul potentially for, or any kind of like either on reverse or on attack stock building, yet. No. I would, but you know what? I will also add this point. So, at the point that you have 4 climaxes in your waiting room, depending on what your deck is doing, the mill may not be so terrible because if you're milling through damage, that I mean, yeah, you could mill climaxes, but I sometimes find I guess I could compare it to like Ronco and Idolmaster Cinderella Girls or Nadeko and Monogatari series. The fact that you're milling through some of your damage could potentially help you get closer to cancels or closer to a refresh and getting climaxes back in your deck. If you want to look at it that way, and if you want to just take the on attack burn as just like a chance at a nice extra plus of damage.
I see. So, well, I think we can see that I was perhaps being a little bit too tunneled in on the idea that the conditions for fulfilling the best parts of this card are a little bit too narrow. Because I only saw it as, oh, you need to mill this and this to get this. Man, that sounds terrible. You know, it sounds so conditioned and color locked. But we have to also consider, well, this could just mill through a lot of potential damage or get us through to, well, potentially game-saving refresh, right? So, there's definitely more than one way to look at the cards. So, thanks, checklist and team. All right, Johnny, it's time for us to move on to the red cards.
Yes. Alright, so the first card is Rabbit-Eared Parka Cocoa. She's level 0, cost 0, power 1500, 1 soul, and her traits are Rabbit House and Bread. And when this card is played from your hand to stage, place the top 2 cards of your deck to your waiting room. If there are any climaxes amongst them, this card gets plus 3000 power until the end of turn. And her second ability is Auto. When this card is reversed and the level of this card's battling opponent is 0 or lower, you can put it to reverse.
So we have a potential burst character and also a, well, always level 0 level reverser. Now, we saw that we have a clock reverser in Chia from the color before, but we see that the kind of difference here, one of the major differences here is the potential to get a lot more power. So Johnny, about this little difference, which do you like better and why?
I prefer this one, and because, like you pointed out, with the clock kick reverser, I guess us players have been a little spoiled with those. Like, you had the same reaction as I did when I first saw it. When I learned that it was just a clock kick reverser and nothing else, I was like, really? That's it? A rare? And that's all it does? Because, like, coming from other clock kick reversers, like the Yui from TLR has a plus power ability, or Yuki from SAO has hand on core, so it just has like a little extra something. And that clock kick reverser in this set doesn't have that. And the fact that this is a reverser but can also potentially become a beater is really nice, because I think the only other reverser I know that can get power is the Akatsuki from Log Horizon. But what's good about reversers that get power is that if you somehow reverse your battle opponent, which with 4/5 is very likely, you get to keep your reverser for their turn, so that when they want to get rid of it, they have to minus another character. So you're basically taking 2 characters for the price of 1.
I think Johnny just put it as best as possible. Melanie, Travis, did you want to add anything to that?
Not really. Johnny kind of stole the words out of my mouth.
Nope, he summed it up great.
All right, let's move on.
Alright, Second guard in the Timber Framed City, Rize. She's a 0/0, 2000 power, 1 soul. Traits are Rabbit House and Weapon. And auto, when this card is played from your hand to stage, choose one of your Rabbit House characters. It gets plus 1500 power until the end of turn.
So we've seen this kind of ability before, where it's just played mostly to burst something down, maybe to kind of assist another character, to just kick it down, at any stage of the game, really. But I've seen, some players that really steer away from this, I guess myself included, and some that really advocate it because they just want to get that incremental advantage one battle at a time. Travis, do you tend to that style, or are you one of those that, like me, don't really like that kind of style of ability?
It's very rarely do I have to rely on ability like that. As typically, I try to look for ways just to put 28 damage on my opponent. Reversing characters is nice, but in the case I do need to reverse something that's a threat like Yami or Arle, that power can help a lot.
Melanie, your thoughts?
I don't know. We're still missing some card spoilers from the set, but these on play give something additional power for free abilities. They're not terrible utility. They can be pretty helpful throughout the game at pretty much any level. It's, I guess, a nice utility card. The fact that it has a 2000 power base isn't terrible, and it also, from the way that the translation is worded, it also can target itself. So if you really just need it to be an on-play 3500, you can make that happen early game. If you need it later game on something for an on-reverse ability, that's there as a free power-up. So
Yeah. All right, Johnny, let's move on.
Alright, the third card, the report that made her smile, Coca. 0/0, 2500 power, 1 soul. Traits are Rabbit House and Bread. Her Brainstorm, place this card to rest. Mill 4 for each climax you hit. Salvage a Rabbit House or a Bread character.
Johnny, thoughts?
Kind of a mixed feeling. I don't generally like brainstormers that don't do anything but brainstorm. She is 2500 power, so she's a decent attacker, but the fact that her brainstorm rests herself is kind of weird. Generally, I see these kind of brainstorms with this much power rest 2 characters, so you could rest a back row and attack with them. And yeah, I'm not really liking it just because it does nothing else in the back row.
Perhaps this is an idea that we have from being so spoiled, right? Because
Yeah,
if we
probably.
look at the English sets, right? If we just look at SAO, the original Silica Brainstormer had almost this exact ability, same power, but you had to rest 2 characters.
Yeah, and that's the one I was mainly thinking of, but
Yeah.
even with Silica, you can rest your back row and attack with her because 25 is not that bad at level 0.
Yeah. So it's kind of a give and take there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Melanie, your thoughts about this one?
I echo Johnny's thoughts on this brainstorm. It would be nicer if it was the pay 1 breast salvage for each climax if she had some kind of additional assist ability, like plus 500 to center, like we've been seeing on some of these cards. But I will also point out too, if you kind of look at this in light of the 0/0, the 0/0 mills 2 cards for its ability, and it does help early game as far as salvage brainstorms go, that that you have something else already in the same color that could potentially put more salvage targets in your waiting room for its ability. So it's not a terrible trade, but I kind of echo Johnny's thoughts in that when it's, especially because it's pay 1 rest itself and it doesn't have any assist ability, we've been spoiled, I think, is the best way to put it.
All right, so not to skip over you, Travis, but I do want us to move to, I guess, a more interesting card. So, Johnny, why don't we go over to the next Rize?
Beautiful looks, Vesco Rize, 6500 power, level 1. Her traits are Rabbit House and Weapon, And when you have one or fewer climaxes in your waiting room, you cannot play this card from your hand, and this card cannot declare a side attack.
Oh boy. So we have a basically a vanilla 6500. Travis, your thoughts?
I like that it's a zero cost 6500. I don't like its downsides. I might just be spoiled from Abyssal Fleet because there's a card that's almost the same thing. 6500 can't attack if you have two or unless you have 2 damage in your clock, which is a lot easier to pull off. But in terms of actually a beater, costless beaters like that are amazing.
So, Melanie, what do you think about this one's conditions?
I think that they're understandable given that it's just a flat out 1-0 attacker. It usually you're used to seeing only one condition on these cards instead of the two, but I think it still is going to have its uses in decks that are looking for a costless beater at this level.
Now, just speaking for myself, I am like super skeptical about using something like this, just because I mean, not being able to declare a side attack is can be a liability, but I don't think I'm bothered by that so much as I am by just the idea that I can't play it. For example, if I have a clean refresh and there's no CXs in waiting room, I have to either brainstorm first or cancel. I mean, in the majority of the mid game where we might play this card most, we probably will be able to fulfill the conditions. So, I see this character as one that kind of has a mid game relevance spike, if you will, that kind of goes away as you try to get to the more ideal end game of, well, need to stock my deck full of CXs and cancel as much as I can. Johnny, did you have anything else to, I guess, pile on top of that one?
Instant 4 of no bias.
Instant 4 with no bias.
But I will point out that the condition for the first one is not that hard comboed with the Brainstormer, or if you're just like a top tier player like me and are out 7 by level 1, it's not that bad.
Right, so be like Johnny, be out 7 climaxes by level 1, and just play Rize all day. So that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
All right. And so moving on to our last character, Johnny.
All right. For my little sister's sake, Kokwa, 3/2, 9500 power, 2 soul. So traits are Rabbit, House, and Bread. Continuous when you have the report that made her smile Coco in your clock. This card gets -1 level in hand. And auto, when this card is played from hand to stage, you may choose up to 1 Rabbit House or Bread character from your waiting room and return it to your hand. And her last ability, discard 1 card from your hand to the waiting room. When this card declares an attack with the Climax Fluffy Hunter on your Climax border, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose up to 2 Rabbit House or Bread characters from your waiting room and return them to your hand. And this card gets +1000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn.
Somewhere across the world, Hatsukaze just got really, really happy hearing this. But we've been seeing her less and less, and more salvaging abilities these days. So, since we're last, Johnny, what do you think?
I think she's a pretty nice early play. She replaces herself when she's played, and her Climax combo gets you even more cards in hand. So, like, if you play her ideally at level 2, you can set up your hand for level 3. I'm not sure what Red has to offer for finishers, but I think from leaked images, I think Rize has a level 3. So, hopefully that's some form of a finisher. So, she can help get that, or maybe, like, future level 2 assists that you're missing at the time.
Seems good. Melanie, your thoughts?
So this card combos with a card on the next slide that is one of the newer climaxes that Bushiroad introduced. It's a on-play draw a card and choose 2 of your characters to get +1 soul for the turn. which I actually think fits really nicely with this card for the climax combo portion of it, because you can have her swing for 2 soul, and then because she's an early drop, you can have your like level ones or something on either side of her, or the 2 other slots on your stage also swinging for 2 soul, plus the climax, replaces itself in hand. So if you look at it kind of from that standpoint, it's just like a lot of nice, hand plussing and stuff. Also, if you can't use the climax combo because your opponent has anti-salvage out, the fact that on play she can kind of hand filter or and hand plus or refill the replace her card in hand and get around that is super solid.
Travis, anything to put on top?
Now this card actually now with that brainstormer that gives us the early play condition. I'm not a fan of the brainstormer.
Sure.
Probably won't use the event, or probably won't use it as a brainstormer itself, and more of an attacker. Just that early play condition of just having it in clock automatically makes this level 3 or 4 of, especially since she does, I believe as Melanie said, replaces herself on play.
Yep. All right. So with that kind of segue into the next slide, Johnny, let's get to the non-rare spoilers and see where we can go from there.
All right, Elder Sister Aura Cocoa, 1/0, 4,500 power. Traits are Rabbit House and Bread. Continuous when you have 3 or more other Rabbit House or Bread characters. This character gets plus 1,000 power. And auto, when this card declares an attack with the climax, the Elder Sister she wants to be on your climax border, and all your characters are of the Rabbit House or Bread trait. Choose up to 1 character from your waiting room, return it to your hand, discard 1 card from your hand to the waiting room, and this card gets plus 3,000 power until end of turn.
So we have kind of a filter salvage ability. It doesn't have a strict plus so much as it's a hand filter. But I guess that's the cost of it not being at rare, because Shadow can give us extra cards in hand. But, well, this being a red CX combo, we get to kind of manipulate the cards in hand versus the cards that are in our waiting room. So real quick, Melanie, doing that quick, I guess, side by side, do you like this one, I guess, better? Do you think it's, well, let's just ask this the blunt way. Do you think that this is good?
I think in the uncommon slot it's good, because typically, if you look at sets more recently, to get a plus in the uncommon slot with this kind of level 1 climax combo, it's typically like on attack pay 1. It also combos with a red card from waiting room. Everybody gets plus 1 soul climax, so that also kind of helps because you're compressing your deck by putting, something over into your stock that you don't need. And also the hand filter isn't bad, because if you're stuck in a situation with the 1/0 Rize from the previous slide, you could discard a climax to set up being able to play her the next turn. I guess it would have been nice if she kept the 3,000 power through your opponent's turn or something, but again, you have to kind of look at it from these are all free abilities on an uncommon, whereas a lot of times if they get something that lasts till the end of your opponent's turn, or if they get a hand plus, they typically end up costing a stock.
Right. All right then. So in the interest of keeping everybody awake, Johnny, what's the next card?
All right, Woof Woof Cocoa, 1/1, 5,500 power. Traits Rabbit House and Bread. Continuous when you have 3 or more other Rabbit House or Bread characters. This card gets plus 2,000 power. And Encore, discard 1 card from your hand to your waiting room.
So we have kind of a vanilla-ish hand encore character. Now, characters have had clock encore a lot more as of late, but this is kind of I guess, a throwback to a time where we had to, well, pitch things from our hand to encore them. Do you like this more than perhaps a Clock Encore variant, Johnny, or do you think that it's fine where it is?
To be blunt, no. I prefer clock encore much more than hand encore because I'd gladly take a damage for a powerful character, but I would not risk hand advantage to keep it.
That's fair. Travis, your thoughts?
I value hand size way too much for hand encore. The only time I'd probably really use it is if I had more than 7 cards in hand and would have to discard cards anyways.
Melanie?
We haven't seen all the spoilers for this set yet. If there's a conditional 2K10 counter, I have had really good luck with some of those combinations in Hand Encore because you could get the 1-0-2K counter in hand, and if either you save the character and make it a 9500 on defense, 10K, and prevent Shimikaze effects, or you can just ditch it because you would have ditched it for the backup effect anyway to keep it on the board. The thing that concerns me with this card, and why I would also agree with Johnny and Travis that it would be better as Clock Encore, is the fact that we haven't seen a plus level 1 combo for red at all, and we only have a hand filter as of right now. And that's already kind of delaying our hand plussing to the 3-2 rare. And that is a scary situation to be as far as hand size goes going into late game when you're looking at that.
Alrighty. So I think we have a very, very, very good counter coming up on our next card. Johnny, why don't you tell us about that one?
Oh boy. Keeper Roses and Bombs, Rize, 2-1, 2000 power. Rabbit House and Weapon. When you use this card as backup, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a Rabbit House character, add it to your hand, then discard 1 card from your hand to the waiting room. Otherwise, return it to its original position. And 2-1, 2500 backup.
So we've seen this effect before. It's been in a lot of sets. I think we could all agree that it's nice to have it here. But that also, in the same breath, we also have seen a lot of other effects that are anti-change for kind of the same cost in terms of the amount of power that you get. So a 1-stock 2500 power backup with a pay 2, maybe sacrifice a character to anti-change. So I just kind of wanted to ask it this way. Guys, which would you rather have? The filter, which can deny damage, or I guess the potential anti-change, that, I guess, incidentally could also prevent damage, but that also can deal with a overleveled character. Melanie, which would you rather have?
I think it depends on what the deck wants to do, honestly. I would still like to see an anti-change counter in this set, but I also like the hand filter getting closer to damage. It's a lot kinder to your stock. Sometimes when you use your average anti-change counter, it eats so much of your stock to get around that on reversibility that you don't have enough stock to counter back with a response the next turn, as far as your own finishers or in-game goes, depending on what's going on in the game. So the fact that this is just a 2-1 counter that also just, hand filters, could get a climax back in your waiting room before, just refreshing the deck, could get you closer to a cancel, I think is much easier on the stock, especially in this color.
Okay, so Travis, real quick, do you like anti-change or do you prefer the filter?
I've never really had the luck with anti-change because, like Melanie said, it does eat a lot of stock. I actually kind of like the hand.
Bias. Totally experience bias talking. If you had just like a perfect game, right? Let's say that you have everything going for you. Which would you rather have? Would you rather have the one that filters or the one that is able to anti-change?
I'd even if with a perfect game, I'd still prefer the hand filter because I don't have anything I want in my hand. It gives me the option to take a damage off my deck and possibly put something I may want in my hand. And if I reveal a climax, I'm canceling.
There you go. Okay. Johnny, your preference?
If I'm facing a clock kicker, I would prefer the anti-change because that's basically saying you're not getting a free damage, whereas the other one you're kind of taking a chance. And I've played enough with this kind of backup to know that sometimes it's just for nothing. You take away the top card, and then your next card is a climax, so it would have canceled anyways. It just feels bad. But generally, I kind of like anti-change more than these abilities, just because lots of things get like on reverse burn or clock kicks, and it's just nice denying your opponent that damage rather than taking the risk.
All right, so I see we're kind of a little bit split on this. Good to hear our differing opinions, but why don't we move on to the next card because we still have a whole color to go.
Right, in the Battle of Cocoa, red, Rize, 0/0, 500 power, Rabbit House and Weapon. All of yours, Elder Sister Aura Cocoa gets plus 1,000 power, and pay 1 bond.
So I'm just going to address this one real quick because it looks like the whole package is supposed to kind of just synergize with this. Because the character in question is an uncommon, it kind of makes me wonder what the rare combo might be, if there is any. And if not, well, we certainly wouldn't be, I guess, playing with the fully stacked deck in terms of what we would expect from effects by rarity, as far as those would be concerned. But I think it's encouraging to see that, well, you do have apples, right?
Apples for the combo.
Yeah, seriously, it's pretty nice, but you know, it can even go over the top if you think about it, right? You can go 75, 85, 95. It can get pretty big. So I would just like to think of those as kind of one package there. And you know, I think obviously if you're going to be running the Elder Sister Cocoa, you probably should be running its very specific, you know, supports and copies 5 through 8. Does anybody think otherwise, that we shouldn't?
No, I think you definitely would.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to the next card then.
All right, Elder Sister Aura Mocha, 0/0, 1,500 power, bread trait. Auto, this ability can only activate once per turn. When you use an act ability, choose one of your characters, it gets plus 500 power until the end of the turn. And then act, place this card to rest, choose one of your characters, it gets plus 1,000 power until the end of turn.
So basically a one-time 1,500 burst, and then just the rest is you know, kind of useful every turn. Melanie, do you like this kind of ability?
It's okay, I think. It is just a common. It's if we don't really get any other kind of back row assist besides the apples like bond going on with the 1/0 and the 0/0, I don't think it's horrible because you can kind of choose where to assign your extra power in both cases, with the potential to stack up to 1,500, but it doesn't help you on defense at all. And I sometimes have problems with cards that sit in the back row that are really only good on your main phase and don't help at all on defense. Also, something that I could see potentially being a problem is the fact that she only has the bread trait, and because she's Cocoa's sister, and she doesn't have Rabbit House, which is something that we're seeing unified on most of the Cocoa and Rize cards in this color. So depending on what else is going on in the finish end game for this deck, that card still being on your stage late game, if like Rabbit House is a trait that's required, could be a small problem.
Yeah, it's good to point that out. Just concerning, I guess, the pump ability. Travis, do you like it? Yes, no, maybe?
It gives the Brainstormer a bit more purpose to just sit in the back row, I guess, because you can use the Brainstorm and then pump something 500 as sort of a pseudo assist. But like Melanie said, it doesn't have Rabbit House, so even if you didn't have one of those in your hand at the start when you used the Brainstormer, if you happen to mill one with the Climax, you still can't grab it anyways. Wait, unless the Brainstormer grabs bread. Let me double check that.
Brainstormer.
Oh, it can. The Brainstormer can grab bread, so it should be fine.
Yeah.
But in terms of checking for Rabbit House effects, yeah, that card's going to fizzle everything.
So here's something that could be potentially overlooked, and this is something I want to ask you, Johnny. So some people might look at this and just dismiss it, but let's also remember that backup abilities are actually act abilities, right? So this card could make, the first backup every turn that you play, 500 power better for free. Do you think that potential, value added might be worthwhile or could make this card playable, or do you think it's still not enough?
I don't think that 500 power is worth it. I think if it was 1,000, well, it'd be a little too crazy. But maybe if the effects were reversed, so like rest give 500 and act ability give 1,000, it would be much better for that. But giving extra 500 power on backups, I usually find that my opponent's at least 1,000 over me.
I see. All right. Now, all right, let's move on to the next color. Travis, this is your time to shine. Why don't you bring us to the first cards?
All right, so the first card we have here is Rabbit House Uniform Megu, blue, level 0, 1500 power with the soul, the trait Ballet. Your other middle border of your center stage gets 500 power, continuous, and an act Brainstorm. Cost 1 rest, overturn the top 4 cards of your deck. For each climax, search for a blue character, show it to your opponent, add hand, and then shuffle your deck.
Hmm. So, why don't you speak to this one and take us through why you think this might be, good, bad, etc.
Okay, it does color lock, so you can't use this anywhere else. But since it doesn't grab traits and it grabs colors specifically, it shines for all the blue cards that in the set, and makes it a lot easier to set up your combos instead of relying or looking for a specific trait. Now the downside, I mean, yeah, it's pay one rest this, which does explain its first ability, just only the middle slot gets 500 power. So it's a small downside, but it's still a good card.
Hey, Johnny, did you have anything to add to that?
I really like this card. I think that this is what the Red Brainstormer kind of should have been. It's continuous power, and the fact that it searches and isn't blind what you get, and also gets from the deck, which is a bigger pool than, say, your clock or your waiting room. And like Travis said, it gets blue characters, so you're not locked down to traits, but you are colored. But it seems that blue is going to be a monocolored deck anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. And I honestly like plus brainstorms that rest themselves because it frees up your second character in your back row in case it also has to rest itself. So yeah, I think it's a great card.
All right. So, sorry, Melanie, but we'll give you the first crack at the next card. Why don't we get to the next one, Travis, which kind of reveals that we really are kind of color locked as all blue.
Next card, Rabbit House Uniform Maya, blue, level 1, 3500 power with the Fang trait. Continuous, you have 3 or more blue. This card gets 2000 power, and then has an auto ability, discard 1 blue card from hand to waiting room. When this declares an attack with the trio of good friends, and you have 4 or more other blue characters, you may pay the cost to draw 2 cards, choose one of your blue characters, and give it 2000 power until the end of turn.
So we have something with, well, seemingly base 5500 power, and that can spike itself to 75, or if you kind of want to go all in on another, just keep on rolling on the power. Contrasting this to other CX combos that we've seen that require you to reverse, this seems to be perhaps a less on reverse reliant combo, but at the same time, it might also have less of a reward. Because this is only a card overall, and you're displacing only 3 cards as opposed to others where you might displace 5. Melanie, what do you think about this one?
I think it's an interesting level 1 hand filter plus combo. It mills through the deck, and it's nice because, again, it's not an on reverse ability, so you're not so worried about having to reverse something. It is color locked and that's something I can address maybe in final summary at the end of this. But so that's a little disappointing, at least for me. But as far as the mono blue deck goes, it's almost like it kind of you're ditching one, but you could ditch something that you don't need in hand, like an extra 0 or something, to potentially draw into 2 more cards that you can use. And if you do chain these and have more than one on the stage, if you draw into something you don't need, you can use it as the discard to draw 2 more. So it mills through the deck, it hand filter hand pluses, and you didn't have to reverse anything. And on top of it, you can choose something to get an additional 2,000 power for the turn, which means by the end of a couple of these attacking, you could have something to really truly get over something at the end.
And I don't mean to skip over you, Johnny, but I do wanted to kind of echo your sentiment from before, where with the Shadow CX, and the ability to get plus 1,000, I guess the ability to just keep on stacking up 2,000 power. I mean, this is a completely different color and combo after all, but you can get a lot of value out of the extra power, and I think that's definitely what the combo is kind of trying to go for. Did either of you want to, I guess, pile on anything to this already, I guess, growing Katamari of value?
What I'm finding interesting with this set is there's a lot of free on attack abilities that don't necessarily plus you. They kind of have their demerits, like in yellow, you could miss. In red, you have to discard one, and here you're drawing, so it's also kind of blind. And it's kind of interesting, but also they're all base 5,500, which when I use level 1s that kind of have a combo and they're 5,500, I think they're pretty great, because at worst, they're a vanilla, and that's not always bad.
Yeah. All right, so Travis, why don't you take us to the next card? We've got a pretty big one here.
Giant wall of text. Anti-sister battle team Chimame, blue, level 3, cost 2, 9k power, 2 soul, with a soul trigger on top of that, and it has the rabbit house trace. Gets 500 continuous 500 for each of your other blue characters. On play, look at up to the top 3 cards of your deck, choose 1 card amongst them, put it in your hand, discard the rest to waiting room. And then also has a combo, climax combo with Trio of Good Friends. On attack, pay 3. And if all your characters are blue, you may pay that cost. And if you do, deal X damage to your opponent. And until the end of your opponent's next turn, this card gets 1,000 power. X in the burn ability is equal to the highest level character amongst your characters.
So basically, you couldn't cannon them for 3, or somehow if you can, I guess, give free levels, you could get more damage off from it. Travis, thoughts?
Yeah. Matter of fact, then we'll get to the spoiler later. There is a way to give free levels, so you could do between 3 to 5 damage with this card, so it's a little more controllable. And since it also is a combo with another card, might as well run it if you're already running the climax anyways. It doesn't seem to be a lot of stock use, so it shouldn't be that hard to use the burn ability.
Johnny, do you like the idea of being able to, I guess, adjust for 3 to maybe more damage with this, or do you think that that's kind of a drawback to this?
Personally, I think 3 is like the perfect number to burn for. 4 and 5 is a little too much. That's just asking for a cancel. But sometimes maybe you are looking for a cancel. So I think the ability to be able to choose to go from 3 to 5 is nice.
And of course, that's only assuming that you are going to use a card that can boost levels in the deck. And if not, then, well, you're probably just burning for 3. So... Great. So why don't we move on? Melanie will get the first crack at this next one. Travis, take it away.
Next card we have is One Step at a Time Chino. It's also a level 3, cost 2, 1,000 power, 2 soul with a soul trigger. Traits are Rabbit House and Coffee. If your opponent has a level 3 or greater character, this card gets -1 level in your hand. Continuous, all your other blue characters get 1500 power. And auto to discard a card from the hand to your waiting room. During the start of your opponent's attack phase, you may pay the cost. If you do, this card gets 2500 power.
All right, Melanie, what do you think?
It's got a decently easy early drop condition, especially if you hit level 2 second and they already played a change or an early drop. It is a chance to be played around its early drop ability. The power walling ability, the fact that it also kind of serves as a global 1500 assist, is decent. Also, the fact that you can hand filter or discard a card, including like a climax before refresh, to get it an extra 2500 power isn't terrible either. But I kind of wish this card had healed almost a little bit, just because of its early drop condition. The walling up is nice against like decks that want to on reverse for a finish effect, but that's not typically something that you see often as far as like early drops go. So kind of mixed feelings. I like all the abilities on this card, especially as a rare 3/2, but also kind of would have liked to see this maybe as a heal instead of maybe the discard a card for the extra power ability on it.
Well, I'm of the mind that I think that many players, particularly experienced players, would agree that if we were to have something that had global power and a heal with the trespass condition, that this card just might be a little bit too good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that
No,
one of
I
the
can
first
see
things
that.
that might go would be the global power. It might be substituted for, own power, and it might keep the auto to discard. But guys, Johnny, what do you think? Do you think that with a heal and a global power, that this card might be a little bit too good?
Oh yeah, it's really hard not to compare this level 3 to another level 3 in the game. I'm not sure if you want me to compare the two because they're kind of similar but kind of not at the same time.
Okay, what were you thinking?
I was thinking of the double rare level 3 Leafa from the first SAO set. She was also an early play that gave global 1500 and had a discard outlet ability that gave her power. But with Leafa, she got 3500 and hexproof, whereas this one's just 2500 power and it's only until the end of turn. But you also don't have to pay one. So I guess that's nice. And Chino's early playability, I'm sort of not a fan of those because I don't like cards that have to rely on your opponent because sometimes they just like know and they play around you. But Leafos was also hard, having 5 or less cards at level 2. So overall, I think the cards are kind of on equal playing grounds because Chino's ability doesn't cost 1, and you can discard any card, where Leafa, you have to discard an Avatar net and pay 1. So I guess what I'm trying to say that I think it's a fine card, especially as a rare.
Makes sense. All right, Travis, why don't we go to the next card? Let you get the first crack at that one.
All right, we got next card we have is Good Sense Maya, level 0 blue, 1000 power, 1 soul with a Fang trait. Auto, when this card's placed from your hand to stage, reveal the top card of your deck. If that character is blue, add it to your hand, then discard 1 from your hand to the waiting room. Also on play, Auto, choose one of your blue characters and gets 1000 power and 1 level until the end of the turn.
Well, I guess we can't always have Silica Gathering Materials be our standard reverse or filter combo.
That card's so good.
I know, right? But what do you think, Travis? Do you think that this card, I mean, because we might be spoiled by seeing other cards with different abilities, do you think that the filter is still good enough on its own?
I just like it for the filter alone, and I actually like its second ability a lot more than the Gathering Materials Suicider, or not Suicider,
Reverser.
Reverser.
Yeah.
Because you can give one of your characters 1000 power and a level to reverse one of your opponent's reversers if they had one on the field, because yours won't be reversed since it is considered a higher level.
Yeah, that's a good point. Melanie, do you find yourself wishing that this had a different second ability, or do you think this is still a sound combo?
I think it's a sound combo just because it says in the translation that we currently have, choose, you get to choose one of your blue characters, and it gets the 1,000 power in a level, which means you could give it to herself and take out one of their level reversers they left on the board. Like if your opponent, like situationally, if your opponent went first and what they went first with was some kind of level reverse, it'll make her a 2,000 level 1 and kind of get around that, as well as the hand filter. And I kind of like hand filters because they let you know what your trigger is, and especially like early game, like I get the feeling that this deck is going to want to build a lot of stock for especially your end game for that 3-2. The fact that like if you reveal climax, if you have a stock already from a previous attack phase, you have the option of brainstorming and searching off of that and potentially not triggering that also helps. So it's not a bad combination.
Seems pretty good. All right, Travis, why don't we get to the next card?
Next card we have is Confidence in Her Body Megu. Level 2, costs 1, 4,500 power with 1 soul, and has a soul trigger as well. Has a continuous assist. All your characters in front of this get X power, where X times 500 power, where X is the level of that character. Has an auto. When the Climax Trio of Good Friends is placed on your Climax border, all your blue characters get 1,500 power until end of turn. And an act, place this card to rest, choose one of your other characters, and it gets 1 level until the end of turn.
Oh, so there we go. There we have the free levels, right?
Yep.
So I'm gonna, I guess, start off this one by saying that level assists are pretty good, and that I think that, well, it looks like Shadow might have just been outclassed here with a kind of global 1,500, or for a total of just 2,500 power when you play the climax in question, because I believe the CX that asks for is a 1K1 with a gate/pants. So, going instead of just saying 1K1, being able to say 2.5K1 is, pretty big and really nice. And as we said before, it's nice to be able to tune the amount of damage that you play with your 3/2. I think that this card will probably be used in a deck that is, well, blue, as we're making this out to be, just because it seems pretty important. And incidentally, also makes for one of the first, I guess, triple CX combo interactions that you could have. Well, not really triple per se, but there's just so many presents under the tree, as it were, to get that. The deck looks really narrow, but also it doesn't look so bad. Moving out, Melanie, did you have any thoughts about that?
I think it's really solid as a level assist because it has 2 abilities that don't cost you any stock, and also like it makes your climax combo at both level 1 and level 3 a lot more solid, because if you have this assist out on the field late game, it's going to power up anything on the field for free by 1,500 power. It kind of buffs up your level 1 game to level through level 2, and helps you keep building stock so that you have enough stock for the pay 3 for the 3/2.
Yeah, it's a good point there. All right, Travis, why don't we move ahead? Johnny, we'll get you a chance at this card.
Next one is True Feelings Maya, level 1, 5,500 power. If you have 1 or fewer cards in your backstage, this card cannot attack. And continuous, if you have 3 or more other blue characters, this card gets 1,000 power.
Thoughts, Johnny?
I think she's okay, 6/5, costless. Her first ability might be a downside if you're just having a really rough time getting 0s or 1s in your hand, but I don't see that ever becoming a problem. So basically, she says this is a 365 costless.
Yeah. Seems all right. Travis, why don't we go to the next card?
Next one we have is Changing Jobs to Rabbit House. Aoyama Blue Mountain. Blue character, level 2, cost 1, 6,500 power with a soul trigger. Novel trait, when this card is reversed, if the level of this card's battling opponent is greater than your opponent's level, you may place that character to the bottom of its owner's deck.
So kind of have a Slayer, right? So, uh, Travis, what do you think? Do you like this kind of level Slayer, or does it not appeal to you?
I don't think it's bad. I thought it was extremely, extremely overpowered at first because I thought the level 2 that boosts levels could choose any character on both your and your opponent's field.
Ah, yeah,
But
that might.
after rereading that, I'm just like, it's good for the occasional early play, but it's not too bad. I wouldn't typically run it, but against some decks, it'd be a shining force to it.
So, Melanie, would you say that this kind of card would be like a one of, or would you use more or less?
I like the beginning part of this effect, but the second part of the effect, so this kind of level 3 Slayer effect is something new that's been popping up since Monogatari in January. I don't like that it bottom decks. And my reasoning behind that is that if you bottom deck something that has a finisher ability or an on-play ability, your opponent has the chance to either draw 2, ditch 1 back into it. They have the opportunity to search for it again. Yeah, it gets it off the field so that they can't encore it or use it or save it by a zombie effect. But I actually like some of the yellow variants of this card that send it to stock instead, rather than bottom decking it, because I feel like with bottom decking it, they have a little easier time getting it back. Yeah, true, they've got to pay the stock to replay it and whatnot, but depending on its on playability, that could be an issue. I do like these level 2 Slayers a lot. I still think it's a good one or two of in a deck, but since we have a pretty good wall level early drop level 3, I think some kind of balance between that card and this card will be decent. I just kind of wish it wasn't a bottom deck, because I feel like there's a lot of ways for your opponent to get that card back and get its on play effects.
All right, it's pretty fair. All right, Travis, why don't we go to the last card of the slide?
Last card we have here is Support Chino. It's blue, level 0, 1,000 power. Has a Rabbit House and Coffee trait. Continuous assist, all your blue characters in front of this card get 500 power. Act, pay 2, put this card to rest. Search your deck for up to one character with Chino, Maya, or Megu in its name. Show it to your opponent, add it to your hand, then shuffle your deck.
Oh my, I think Akashi in the fleet has just gotten a little jealous. Johnny, do you like this?
Oh man, all the searches. Between this and the brainstorm rests itself, and this rests itself. Basically, it says if you miss with your brainstorm, get it anyways.
I mean, that is 3 stock, but
It's true, but you're really hurting for that card, I guess. Desperate times calls for desperate measures.
definitely. I mean, this seems to me like it would be kind of a very necessary part of what's looking like the kind of mono blue deck that we're seeing here. But there are some other cards that we have in the color that might not be automatic inclusions. So let's head to the next slide. And Travis, what do we have next?
First card we have on the slide is Drawing Practice Megu. Level 0, 500 power. Ballet trait. Auto, when this card is placed from your hand to stage, look at the top card of your deck. Either leave it there or put it to the bottom of your deck. It has a bond with True Feelings Maya, which is a pay 1.
And that True Feelings Maya, again, was that one that couldn't attack if you don't have the full backstage that we saw from earlier. So I am not quite sure about this one. quite frankly. Just because, I mean, Scrying 1 is pretty good, but to get the full value of this card, right, we might want to play the True Feelings Maya. And I must admit, I'm a little biased because I like going for things at full value. And for me, if I was to use this card at full value, it would mean having to use the bond target and playing any number of these also for the incidental scrying effect. And I'm not sure if I'm fully sold on that just for the scrying. But Melanie, can you think of a way that I might be being misled by my own reasoning or my quest for value?
I I think of it less of the draw two effect from the combo. I mean, yeah, you can use it for that, and that's great. But I kind of think of this as in terms of trigger control. I have a card that I have really grown, an assist that I've really grown to love in Monogatari because it has this ability, but it's relightable. And that was on a rare, though. This is just an uncommon. I think I like it because if it controls your trigger, I would actually pair this with the bond, but I probably wouldn't necessarily use it for the draw two combo. I would probably use it to attack with something else first and just control and build clean stock with, if I could. And if it wasn't going to be clean stock and I didn't want to bottom deck it for whatever reason, I could use it for the draw two and then use it to ditch, for another draw two if I had the bond target out.
Okay. So, pardon me, Travis, but we might just need to gloss over this choosing stationary Chino because she just is an assassin. So the choosing will to fight or choosing to fight Kirito from SAO Volume 2 or 2 Volume 2 is basically the same thing where it's a base 5,000 power and it comes into play. I think that people can speak for these kind of burst or assassin characters as, kind of cool, but pretty vanilla, as they're nice to have. So, let's skip to the next Maya that we've got.
The next Maya that we have is Enthusiastic Maya. It's level 0, 3,500 power with a soul, the Fang trait. Continuous, if you do not have another Chino, Maya, or Megu character on the stage, this card cannot stand during your stand phases.
This also seems to make us want to play more than one character, or just maybe one other character during level 0, which I guess isn't criminal. But I don't know. Do you think that this is a downside that's worth worrying about, Travis?
Not really. I mean, if you play that, pair it with the Brainstormer or the Chino assist, you got a 4K beater that can actually stand.
Oh yeah, totally forgot about that. All right. How's the next card then? What are we looking at here?
Next card we're looking at is Daily Life in the Rabbit House Chino. It's level 1, 5,000 power with Rabbit House and Coffee trait. When this card declares an attack with the climax, welcome to Rabbit House. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, this card gets power X, where X is the number of Rabbit House characters you control multiplied by 500.
Huh. This is pretty much power only. Looks like. Johnny, do you like power only?
No. Based on even assists, I don't like to have only power assist. I like to have like diversity in my effects. So the fact that this basically just gets big is kind of a turn off for me. It's basically the Assassin Chino on a climax combo. And I don't really see the use in using this when you can just play the other card.
Melanie, do you agree?
Yeah, I think the fact that it's also in direct conflict with what I would consider to be another slightly stronger level 1 combo also doesn't sit well with me. Beyond to just chime in with what Johnny was saying with it just being for, pure power. When you could potentially hand filter, mill through your deck, plus that kind of thing is my thought on it.
Alrighty. So, As we're seeing here, we have the CXs. One is the one that combos with everything, just like Guile's theme, with the 1K1 and pants. And we have the book that I believe is the one that goes with just the power combo. Now, there is also one other aspect that we should look over, and that would be the cards that come from the trial deck. Because as we know, trial deck cards are still cards that you can use in a deck from the series. And as luck would have it, TD cards tend to be pretty unique. They might not necessarily be spectacular, but they could also include some effects that we might not see otherwise. So I'm just going to power through these just to make sure that we haven't missed anything. So first, if we get to the next slide, we have the Bright and Cheerful Cocoa. That's a 2/1. It's a kind of global 1,000 assist for your other rabbit and bread characters. And you can pay 2 and rest it to salvage a character. I'm not sure how crazy I am about having to pay 2 to salvage a character, and given that we have other assists in the in other colors, I mean, that could be a concern if we didn't already know that the others were color locked. So in that sense, I think it could be useful, but I just don't know how comfortable I am with paying 2 stock. Travis, do you like paying 2 stock for the salvage ability, or do you think it would have been better as a different cost?
I'd rather pay 2 stock to search. I wouldn't want to pay 2 stock to salvage.
Oh.
It's just a little too much, especially if you're playing that card at level 2. Paying 2 stock just to salvage means a level 3 you're not playing if you level up.
All right. Cool. So after this, we have the Twin Tail Girl Rize, which is just the vanilla 0 stock 1500 power backup. Barring no other, 0 stock 2000 power backup in the set proper, this might be the one that we have to go to. Should we find something? Yeah. After that, we've got the a little bit cool Chino, which is just a looter, really. When you play it, you loot, you draw and discard a card. This is actually quite playable. I've seen it pop up in other sets because the ability to just filter and set up for next level is quite good. It also helps that blue, as we've seen before, is pretty reliant on getting certain combos and or combo pieces. So I actually think that this is pretty good. Melanie, do you like this Chino? Do you think that it's good to be able to just loot?
Yeah, I think it's a nice hand filter. I have a card similar to this in Little Busters that I play. It also helps you draw into climaxes that you need for climax combos because it is just draw on play, and you can kind of do some interesting interactions with this and maybe that 0-0 bond that we saw on the previous slide. Like, let's say you're holding the 1-0 or you bonded the 1-0 back to your hand, you still want to get the climax combo. This is a nice, can just attack and crash in for some damage, but let's say your scry revealed that your climax you missed drawing into is on top. Well, on play you can draw this and hand filter out something else you don't need. So it gives you some utility. I mean, probably a 2 of maybe, but still I think really solid.
I've seen some people use this kind of effect as a 3 of or 4 of, just because they are such a big proponent of displacing as many cards as possible. I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but I mean, I would say probably for the cuteness factor, I might need to run 5 and allow myself to get disqualified, just because. Did I reveal that I like Chino best? Well, in that case, okay, fine. I'll just run 42 of them, and just
8 plus 2 souls.
yeah, exactly. All solved. Well, good. We completely solved the series, guys. So, after her, we have the in the Timber Frame City Chino, which can't side attack. We've seen this kind of effect a lot before, and skipping over the rock paper scissors for a second because I actually want to get to that one last. We have the 3/2 Cocoa that gets a little bit more power when you have 3 or more of the Rabbit House and or Bread characters, and heals on play. Pretty standard, I'd say. And then we have Maid Uniform Rize, or Johnny, go, fix your nosebleed right now.
It's not
That's-
stopping. It's not
Yeah.
stopping.
But when you play it, you can pay 2 and salvage a Rabbit House character. This is interesting because it's not when it is sent from the stage to the waiting room, so you can't really kind of fudge around using it when, or kind of attacking with it when you've already had one stop to salvage it. So the timing could get a little awkward. But these are all kind of, as we can see from here, probably the most high impact card that we might see would be just the Chino that loots, because that's I guess that would do the most out of these. But there's something about this rock paper scissors card, or this Janggenpon, that is kind of kind of appealing. I don't know. At the end of every episode, I find myself getting overly excited about winning the rock paper scissors because it took me way too long to figure out what exactly you were supposed to do. And then I played, and then I got really excited. And then my cat looked at me like I was the crazy person. And then I started getting judged. But besides the point of getting overly excited about playing rock paper scissors, does anybody actually like this card? Because there's a few variants of it, and I can't help but think that you might be able to give your opponent a subliminal message if you play it by suggesting that they play, a certain way. Like, okay, you should throw rock. That way you can throw paper and always draw a card. Does anybody want to say that they like this? I know this probably isn't a great card, but
Supposedly, if you ask people what color their shirt is before playing rock paper scissors, they will always do scissors.
really?
Yes, because one of my friends did this in front of the entire class, and sure enough, everyone did scissors. And I was like, okay, that's weird. I don't know what the psychological thing is behind it, but it's been proven multiple times in front of my eyes. So,
I
if your
would
opponent
honestly-
doesn't know that trick, free card.
I would
Huh.
honestly just play this card just to be like, oh hey, I'm just playing cards to waste time, and then probably get called for slow play.
I mean, another card for waifu decks.
True.
Oh, definitely. Melanie, do you like this card at all? I gotta ask.
I think it's fun. I don't know that. I mean, I just think it's fun. That's all I think. It's a free power up of 1,000 power, and you get to play rock paper scissors, and potentially plus a card that you got to top check or something. I think you could have a lot of fun with this card and kind of somewhat disrupt the game for a little bit more fun with it. That's my opinion.
I'm sorry, did you say that we're supposed to have fun? Guys, I thought I made it very clear. This game is totally not about having fun. Oh my gosh, I think we're just going to have to stop right here and apologize to all of our listeners that we
What?
said they have fun. I know. We better shut down the whole thing and say, no, how dare you have this opinion that you're supposed to have fun? Well, in any case, that notwithstanding, no, it is true. This card does seem like a lot of fun. We highly encourage people to have fun. And in case somebody was not able to read through my very convincing deadpan, super convincing, that, I mean, okay, for the super competitive player that wants to use this set, probably won't really use the rock, paper, scissors, especially if they want like more reliable ways to draw cards. But hey, you know what? I mean, if it works for somebody and they really want to use it, I won't blame them if I see them using it. But just please don't use more than 4. That will cause problems.
Or a week, no one has to know.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
use 5. Who cares?
Oh dear. Well, anyway, those of us that have stuck through the end, thank you so much for listening to us kind of ramble on about these cards. If we have some opinions that you think are completely wrong, if we are absolutely out of line and you want to tell us something that we might have missed about a card, or perhaps offer another idea, please leave us a comment. Please be sure to subscribe to us, follow us on Facebook, make sure to sign up for the monthly giveaway. A big thank you again to our sponsors